Hello, I'm Joe Langton with Automating Success Show. I today have the pleasure of interviewing Helen Greiner. She is the current CEO of Tertill, and it is a awesome robot weeding machine. We'll get more into that in a minute, but I have to tell you, I'm just going to introduce some of your other accomplishments because I think they're amazing. So, Helen has revolutionized the cleaning industry with the introduction and the sale of millions of Roomba vacuums. Everybody knows the Roomba, and honestly, as someone into robotic mowing, I always have to explain to people that it's not a Roomba, it's a robotic lawnmower. So that just goes to show how how much of an impact that you've had on.
Just add high-speed spinning blades.
Yeah, exactly, perfect. Delivered some of the first robots in combat to remediate IEDs. Created stuff for the U.S. Army, saved, hundreds of and thousands of lives. Demonstrated a cocoon-delivered behavior-controlled robot to the government that resulted in the initiation of the Mars rover program, which I think is absolutely amazing. Explored the Great Pyramids, which hopefully we can talk about that a little bit because I'm totally amazed by that. And I love the fact that there was no treasure found, but hey, you got to explore, right? So worked for JPL, NASA, and the MIT Artificial Intelligence Lab, founded CyPhy Works, a drone company that delivered persistent drones flying for many hours, days, and weeks automatically. They're deployed in Iraq and Syria. Let's see. And I think this is awesome, just knowing that you've been wanting to create robots since you were 11 years old. And what inspired you was R2-D2 in Star Wars. So this is a quick introduction on this amazing woman. Helen, what would you like to add to that at this point in your life?
I would just say, yes, it's all true. I'm a robot geek.
Well, most of the people that are tuning into this are either business geeks or robot geeks. So the good news is you're going to help the business people that tune in, and the robot geeks are going to relate totally with you. And I'm one of both. I love business and I also love robotics. So I always like to dive in, here on the show. We already kind of started with it with you, 11 years old, you go and see Star Wars and you become, as in your own words, a robot geek. So, looking at your childhood, I obviously know during the research you were born in London, but kind of dissect that a little bit, kind of tell us where you started and kind of what you think got you to where you are as the woman in front of you.
Well, I fell in love with R2-D2 when I was 11. I saw him on the big screen, 77. And, he had a personality. He was a character, a personality. He was more than a machine. And ever since then, I wanted to build things that are more than machines. And I'm not saying we have R2-D2 yet. We haven't saved the universe. But with the PackBot, the military robots disposing of IEDs, one time a Marine brings one of these robots into the robot hospital in Iraq, and he's like, "Can you fix it? Because it's in pieces." And it turns out that he didn't want it just replaced. He wanted this one because he had hash marks on the back of its head, his disconnected head, that had how many missions he'd been on. It was like 17 IED missions, one vehicle-borne mission. And they named it Scooby-Doo, and they thought about it as one of their teammates, right? And they really wanted it back. Now, we just said it voids the warranty, but I think it's an example of people getting attached to them. And with, the cute, if I may say so, bleeps and bloops that the Roomba has, people buy it absolutely as an appliance. They take it home, and the only thing they've had experience with that acts like that is a pet, and they start naming them. In fact, one Georgia Tech survey found that 66% of the Roomba users named their Roomba.
Well, and that doesn't surprise me at all because one of the things that we've done is we put them out in service agreements. So like we put robot lawnmowers at people's houses through service agreements. We service them, we do the blade changes, and then they have the robot. But what I find is every customer names it. So like one customer, for instance, calls theirs Casper because it just roams around in the night. Another guy named his Albert the Eighth. I mean, so it's actually crazy because these people will call for service, and this might be a little different than even the Roomba, but this is more like the IED robot. And people will, he'll be like, Joe, Albert the Eighth needs some blades, And so, yeah, you're right. I mean, they get, like, there's a relationship that's developed with this.
When we first put the Roomba out and we were doing customer support ourselves, we would get calls saying, can you replace this robot? It's like, no, we'll send you a new one. Don't worry about it. Just send it back. And they're like, no, I need it replaced. This is my robot. No, I mean, I'm sorry, I need it fixed. They expected us to send an ambulance and, give it a little CPR or something. Yeah. And they wanted that one. So I think it is true for the home robots as well.
Yeah, no, it's fun. It really speaks to, they satisfy a need, which is, cleaning the house or cutting the grass. But yeah, I think it's that constant, it's always there. Yep. And as humans, like you said, it's kind of like having a pet. It's always
and there. Anthropomorphizing them. The number of times people have told me my Roomba moved its virtual wall so it could escape, or my Roomba moved the plant in front of the virtual wall so it could escape. And I can assure them that it didn't do that. But no, that insist that it thought about it and planned it. It's Well, I haven't had anybody tell me that yet, but for the robots, so maybe they think that the Roomba has a little more AI, So basically from a young age, obviously we know what got you into robots, but what kind of values were kind of instilled in you growing up? I know you guys moved here from London, but just kind of go into that, like the move and coming here, and just things you're passionate about, and what made you want to get automation out into this type of industry. So I moved here when I was 5. At the same time I saw Star Wars, I had a TOS-80, one of the first home computers. My dad had bought it for the family, and he went with me and took classes at Radio Shacks, and I was amazed at how little the adults, because I was 11, right, and I could do it and they couldn't. I was amazed at what you could accomplish with computer program, how powerful it was. And even though it wasn't crystallized in my mind, we had a tape deck that you could control, so I could see it could do mechanical things as well. And that's eventually I went to MIT to try to learn how to build robots. And I discovered, although I learned a lot of amazing things at MIT about engineering, they didn't really know how to build robots for the real world.
Yeah.
So right out of MIT, I co-founded iRobot with 2 business partners, Rod Brooks and Colin Angle. And we did a lot of robots, a lot of different kinds of robots. You mentioned some of them in the pyramids, test flights for Mars landers, robots for law enforcement. We did robots for downhole oil, a toy with Hasbro, so many different robots. But the ones that people know today and what iRobot concentrates on today is the Roomba vacuuming robot. And they sold off the defense work, which went to FLIR, and then now it's Teradyne.
Really? So what was some of your favorite projects then you worked on? I mean, what is it, the iRobot just because it's the one that solved the need, or like what? Because there's a certain amount.
I think the one that I'm most proud of is the pack bots, and even the pork at my at the drone company, because they've been credited with saving the lives of hundreds of U.S. servicemen and thousands of civilians. And so when I think back of what I'm proudest of, having those people be able to come home because they had a robot on the mission.
So
was great.
Are you at liberty to explain how those work, or is there certain things you can't talk about that? Because I'm trying to figure out, are these like true robots, or are they like remote control units that people are running? And then how are what type of design goes into these? Look,
I've got a really expensive notion of what a robot is. It doesn't have to be fully autonomous or anything like that. The remote control is fine. It really just depends on the mission, right?
Gotcha. Okay.
Roomba is autonomous for the vacuuming mission, but you wouldn't want to put it in a cave in Afghanistan and hope it can get around, right?
Yeah.
Or even in the garden, like we do with Tertill.
Yeah.
So I usually like to say autonomous for a particular mission. But yeah, the ones that we deployed in the in the 2000s were mostly teleoperated, some protected teleoperation. Some behaviors on them, but for the most part, the soldiers needed control of them because they weren't ready to do the entire missions autonomously then. Now, the story's changed, and my last position was actually a civilian, but a general level position in the Pentagon. And now I can tell you, with the dollars and the deep thought going into robotics for the military, there's so much going on in autonomy.
Wow, that is amazing. I mean, just I said it a little bit when we kind of made our introductions earlier, but when I got into robotics, I never, I got into it basically for my industry to cut grass and do things that I had trouble doing in labor. And I never thought, fast forward 5 years later, I'd be sitting talking to someone on a Zoom call that had access, was working in the Pentagon. And it's amazing. Like the doors that have been opened getting into this automation world has just been amazing for me. And I just want to tell you, like, I'm totally like enamored, like talking to you about, like, this is like crazy.
Thank you.
So, okay. So we've all had a first job, right? So, I mean, you didn't just start developing robots, and just start doing that. So like, what was the first job that you had? Like, tell me a little bit about your starts in a professional career, like, or just in any type of work that you did.
Any kind of work. Okay, I'm going to skip the deli. But I worked at JPL when I was at MIT as an intern, and it was a wonderful, amazing place to work because of the work that was going on in satellite robotics and just the beginnings of the MOAS programs at the time.
But see, let's not skip the deli, because I like to talk about stuff like that with the deli, because here's why. Because I think there's so many people, and this is one of the reasons I do this podcast, is to inspire people to realize that, we all might have a dream, but we all have to, there's stepping stones to get to that dream. Okay. So like, to me, I look back, like I used to work at Best Buy, and I tell people to this day, it's one of the favorite jobs I ever had.
Were you on the Geek Squad, or were you?
I wasn't. I was actually, so I did car stereo, mobile car stereo installation, and I installed car alarms, and that's back when an SPST relay was this big, or an SPDT relay, and you had these big relay packs that you had to like Velcro them together, stuff them up in a dash, take a Cadillac and figure out what the resistance on the key was, and say, okay, that system has this resistance, and you'd wire a resistor into the relay. So, when I look at it now that I'm in robotics and I'm fixing the things that someone like you invents and makes, I look back on my career at Best Buy, which is what got me into small circuitry and analysis. And that was a stepping stone that got me to the point where I am right now, living like my dream life, So how long did you work at the deli? And what were you thinking when you were in that deli making those sandwiches?
How can I get out of here?
and how long did that happen?
And that made me apply to the internships going through MIT so we could have a summer job. That
it was a stepping stone.
A stepping stone.
Yeah. So that's perfect. So you talked about iRobot. You said you started with a few people. There were three people, right? So, what made the three of you say, man, why are we vacuuming our houses anymore? Somebody we need to make something that does this. I
got to tell you, we weren't smart enough for that.
Okay.
We decided the robots at MIT were getting a lot of attention. It was a new paradigm of robot control, behavioral control, where you have a lot of going on in real time rather than a big planning system putting all the, thinking about everything and putting all the actions in. So with this new paradigm, there were these insectoid robots, and they looked amazing, right? They were like crawl around with legs and stuff, gets a lot of attention. And so they won the cover of, Scientific American and, Discover and all these places. So being very naive, just out of school, we're like, there must be a business here, right? Everyone's so excited about this. Which I like to tell young entrepreneurs, don't drink your own Kool-Aid, right? Our first plan was to put the first robot steps on the moon. Now, I'm not saying we were wrong. We were maybe just 20 years ahead of our time.
Yeah.
It might be a business model you could create today with all this work going on in commercial space, but it probably wasn't the right one at the time. But we just started off, we'd do any robot for money, basically. And we worked with a lot of large companies, everyone from SC Johnson Professional to Baker Hughes Intech in the oil industry to Tennant Castec Noble, in large robotic cleaners. And we always had really amazing technology, and we always thought they were going, to the moon, so to speak.
Yeah.
But they never did, because it was really hard to push the large companies along. They work at glacial paces, and we were trying to get robots out there, and they were running research programs, basically. And it became obvious to us it wouldn't go anywhere that way. So we started raising our own venture capital in 98, and that allowed us to fund the Roomba. Now, one of my business partners at Tertill actually came up with the idea for the Roomba, Joe Jones, and he wrote a 5-page paper saying, we're doing these large cleaning robots now. It might not be the right time. Here's a concept, the simplest thing you can have. And so it's simple, but there's so much complexity if you drill down into it. How do you deal with the edges, and how do you navigate around? All those problems had to be solved. And how do you do it at a price point that people will take out their wallets and buy it? So there was a lot of invention that had to be done to get there. How do you deal with, hair? The first Roombas didn't do that well with hair, but, get wrapped around the blades. And, so much learning in the very specific industries beyond the robotic technology that we brought to bear.
So I did to say, even a regular vacuum cleaner doesn't do really good with hair, because it gets wrapped around too. And I think it's important to say this, because since I deal a lot with robotic lawnmowers, people expect, once you put the name, anything robotic or automatic, people automatically assume that it has to be able to figure out all of its own problems.
Yes.
And it's got to be better than the thing that you push around. And I'm and you're shaking your head. It's like, it sounds like you guys came up and had that issue too. I don't understand what happens, why a human brain works that way. Go ahead.
Oh, I can remember early on, Consumer Reports wrote an article about the Roomba and said, this is crazy. This takes longer than vacuuming myself. And we were shocked, right? It's like, why would someone watch the robot vacuum do the whole job and think that that's any kind of a comparison when you don't have to do any of it, right? You don't just let it do it on its own. It's the mentality. Robots actually work best today at the beginning by reimagining the job and how to do it. Like Roomba's one example, right? You do have to pick up the floor. We had complaints about that. Why can't it pick up the floor for me? Why can't it do stairs? If we had taken those feedback and incorporated them, we would have got to market, right?
Yeah.
So it's a matter of picking a place where the robot does enough of the job to make it a real value for the customer, but not trying to take on every challenge it could possibly face.
Well, and so I'm so happy you just said that, because I actually, when I work with landscapers, people sometimes wonder, why my landscape company is so successful with these robots. And I realized right away, I don't need it to do 100% of the cutting. I need it to do a portion of it. Okay. So I've gotten to the point now where I'm like, working with all these different manufacturers where I'm like, okay, I can almost automate 75% of my mowing. That's great. So like when I hear you even talk about the Roomba, the stairs, picking up, these are all things you would have to do if you vacuumed anyways. And you don't use a lot of times the same attachment on your vacuum cleaner when you do the stairs as you use when you do the floors. So I wanted to take that opportunity to expand on what you said because
and the lawnmowers also had they reimagined the job, right? Instead of bagging the clippings and having a disposal issue, they go out more often, do the job, so you have much smaller clippings, which you can leave right on your lawn, and it's better for the lawn.
Well, it's better, and a lot of people don't realize how much better robotics are for the environment also. I mean, so Tertill, you guys are making a robot, and now we don't have to put chemical. I mean, no one wants chemicals in their gardens, right?
Yes.
And now they don't have to put chemical in the garden. If they use
I wouldn't even dream of putting chemicals in my garden, in my vegetable garden.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, we know commercial farming, they have to spray chemicals, and then for us with robotic lawn mowing, one of the things that I tell people is, when you actually look, and I don't know if you know this or not, but like, a lawnmower, you can take 11 Toyota Camrys and put it next to one high idling zero turn, and that zero turn lawnmower makes the same amount of carbon emission as 11 of these Toyota Camrys.
Wow.
Okay? Because vehicles have all sorts of emissions control, catalytic converters and stuff. Lawnmowers don't. So one of the things that I tell people is automation is not only a lot of times a redundant labor saver, it's also great for the environment. It's great for where we live. They're quiet. Butterflies and bees, I'm sure, don't mind your robot moving around inside that garden. So,
can I say a little about the Tertill?
Yeah, go ahead. This is what the show is about. Let's talk about it.
It's another example of reimagining the job for a robot, right? It's a little robot that weeds, and the way it weeds is it takes out any seeds that start to sprout with its cleated wheels. And if a weed dares to poke up its little head, off with its head with a weed.
So Helen, real quick, I just want to interject real quick where you're at. So not everybody's going to watch us on YouTube and be able to see that. So I just want to dissect what she was just holding up at the screen. So you have to understand, if you were looking at this robot right now, the wheels are not like a normal wheel. They sit at an angle. How many degree angle are those wheels on? Like what's the approximate degree? Like 60 degree probably?
Yeah, looks around 45.
Okay, so 45 degree angle. So they sit on this weird angle, which when she said it, like, as it's going, it's like it cultivates the bed. So imagine a garden bed, or a garden usually has nice composted soil. So it's working the top layer of that soil. Okay. Yeah. And that's one of the things I could see as she was holding it up.
In doing so, it disrupts the seeds as they start to sprout. And that, that interrupts about half of them. So they never sprout. But if they do.
Yep. So to explain, I'm going to explain what's on the bottom. So
there's a small weed whacker between the wheels that can spin. It's about, 2 inches long. And as it's running around, 50% of the time it's spinning its weed whacker in case any weeds show up. Now, the question is going to be, with this small Roomba-like but smaller device, how does it not get your plants? And the first thing is it's got capacitance sensors around it. So it senses if it makes contact with a plant, and it's very light touch, and it just goes the other way. And we've had no trouble with it acting gently with plants. If there's something that's low, it considers that a weed, because when you put the Tertill in a garden, you start with a fully weeded garden, usually at the beginning of the year, or you do one less weeding. You put it in, and it prevents weeds from ever growing. So it doesn't go out like a human, and it detects a weed, recognizes it, has a dexterous arm and manipulate it, and then has a disposal problem. Instead, it reimagines the job to do it robotically, and it prevents weeds from ever growing. To protect your small plants, which it might think is a weed, we have a small wire piece. It's a little circular plant gourd. And if there's a seed you put in, you just put this around it. Or if there's a very small seedling that you want to protect. And when it gets to be about 3 or 4 inches tall. You can leave the guard on, or you can take it away and it'll be fine.
So can you explain the capacitance feature? Can you break down a little bit on how that even works, how the robot detects that when it's coming up
It's
again?
basically, it's detecting the electron flow. It basically detects if there's moisture in something, so it won't hurt anything that if it's metallic or if it's a piece of wood. It even works on stone. It doesn't work well on plastic, I have to tell you, because it doesn't detect that as with the capacitance sensors. But it's not just the capacitance sensors. There's a dozen sensors that we fused with the robotic algorithms to have a lot of behaviors that allows it to navigate all around the garden.
So
it's also it's solar powered. If you look at the top of it, it's got a big square solar panel. Most of the top of the device is solar panel. This guy, it lives in your vegetable garden. And you don't take it out all year. And every day, intermittently throughout the day, every 20 minutes or so, we'll check if it's got battery charge. It'll come on and it'll do some weeding, and then it'll shut down, charge up, and it'll do it again. So it's running all throughout the day to get the best conditions.
And then at night, it just shuts off and waits for the sun to come back up.
That's right.
So is there a way to charge it? Let's say if it's cloudy a bunch of days and somebody wants to charge it up and put it out in the garden, is there a way to do that?
So usually there's enough sun for a few days because we never go down too low on the battery. So it'll last for several days, even if it becomes cloudy. But if somebody wants to or has a need, there is a small USB port at the bottom. You take off this cap, you plug it in. So if you wanted it to run for longer for whatever reason, you could take it inside, charge it with a USB, and put it back out in the garden.
And what's your guys's what's the price point on that unit?
This is $349.
$349. So here, this is like I just want to do
but
this.
That takes care of your weeding all year for years.
So here I'm gonna get to this. So $349, and what will we agree on? How many months is a garden going? Probably 5 months, typically 6 months.
We suggest leaving it a little longer because you want it in before the weeds start, and you want to keep it weeded after you take the plant, after you're done harvesting.
So probably 210 days in a year, right?
Yeah, take it out before the frost. But when you would take your hoses in, I think would be a good rule.
Yeah. So if we I like to take opportunities like this because this is like how this is how my business owner brain works. So I hear that $349, and I say, okay, 210 days in the year, you might be able to use that unit. So if you just break down the yearly cost and say $349 divided by 210, okay, you're at $1.66 a day, right? But how many years do you think you get out of that unit? How long is that been lasting?
It depends what you do to it, but 2 or 3 years, maybe.
Yeah. So let's just divide
it hasn't been on the market long enough to know exactly.
Yeah. So for less than 55 cents a day, you never have to worry about weeding your garden. So see, this is the stuff for me that like I always like to work with people like you guys, because this is the stuff I try to get out to end users is you have to look at like the cost per day to not have that stuff in the garden ever. So I think that's amazing. I mean, that's such a small cost. And how many square feet? This is important. How many square feet can one of those do?
It'll be about 200 square feet.
Okay.
And
then
most
if you have more
vegetable
square
gardens,
footage, you just put multiple bots, right?
Yeah, quite a few of our customers do that. If they have a small farm or something, they try it because it's easy to try. You don't have to do a huge investment to try it. You section off an area for it, and then it'd be in a 200 square foot area. And the next year you can buy another one for the next area, then another one for the next area, and build up if you have a larger area. Yeah. That brings us to it does require a boundary around the robot, a 3 to 4 inch boundary. And that seems to work in vegetable gardens because people, they tend to have some kind of delineation for the vegetable garden, or you don't mind putting in, either a piece of wood, or you might have a raised bed already that has a delineation. But it doesn't have an automatic boundarying system, which is why we don't market it yet to landscape beds.
Okay.
But I've had one in a landscape skate bed, and I have one in my blueberries this year, and it's doing awesome.
Well, we have plenty of customers that Automated Outdoor Solutions already has that have plenty of vegetable gardens. We got to figure out how to get these things on our website, because I think they're amazing. So after iRobot, let's kind of go back to kind of what gets us here. So after iRobot, it looks like you worked at NASA in the Jet Propulsion Lab.
No, that was earlier than iRobot. I actually did a drone startup company called CyPhy Works, and we were making persistent drones that fly 24/7. The trick, because I always believe in cheating, the trick was to connect them with a tether to the ground. So we were supplying tether and communication, power and communications through a very, very small microfilament tether, very, very thin, so it didn't have a lot of weight. And we could fly them up to 400 feet. Those were deployed by special forces over in Iraq and Syria, and they were credited with saving lives as well.
So what was the reason for that? So hold on, help me understand this, because this is fascinating. So it has the tether, can go up 400 feet. So is this just to kind of get a bird's eye view of things all the time?
Yes, yeah. So you can imagine, you don't unless the robot's doing it fully autonomously, you don't have, you've got your eyes on the situation, right? You don't have time to, go and fly a robot. So you have that persistent operation of the robot. A small drone, they only last like 40 minutes, an hour max, sending them up. So having a robot that's 24/7, we flew them for weeks at a time sometimes. It was a very, very useful piece of equipment. Plus, as a communications relay. So not just surveillance, but communications. Communications suck when you're near the ground. They get really nice when you go up high. So being able to transmit from wherever you end up.
So the communications thing is not something I would have thought of, but that makes total sense. So that's fascinating. So then NASA and MIT was then before Roomba. So what did you do over there then? Because obviously a guy like me hears NASA and I'm like, I'm thinking of the moon and Mars and all sorts of cool stuff.
I was an intern at NASA, and I was helping build gripping devices for the Earth observing system.
So you said gripping devices, you said?
Yeah, like robot grippers.
Oh, gotcha.
Like hands.
Awesome. So what are some of your biggest takeaways then from that experience? Like, making the robot grippers at NASA and then doing the drones, are there any takeaways like that? Obviously you said it was an
It would have been a very different, but as exciting life. I'd be, probably involved in the Mars programs now if I had stayed in that realm. But at the end of the day, it seemed like to make robotics real, there had to be companies that were, taking that virtuous cycle of profits invested into more technology to really make the robot revolution happen. So I decided the entrepreneurial rather than government research was more for me.
Good for you. I'm glad you made the jump. So totally. So then how did you become CEO of Tertill now? And obviously I see the connection because it sounds like the inventor of Roomba is with you. So,
well, I was done with my appointment at the Pentagon. I was working, for military acquisitions, and I was looking around to what to do next. And I started looking at the outdoor robot market. Obviously, I'm not going to do indoors because of my affiliation with iRobot. I'm thinking, hey, that's going to be the next big thing. And I really do believe that's the next big thing with the Tertill, with the automated lawnmowers, $650 million a year business in Europe. They haven't caught on as much here yet, but I know you're working on that.
We are.
And so I could imagine there's a lot of different tasks, and applying the data services that we have started to see indoors to the outdoors would be an extremely exciting space.
Yeah, no, for sure. And the thing.
So I was talking to my friends at Tertill and saying, I'm going to start a company in this space. Do you have any advice since you're working in this space? And they said, well, why don't you come be our CEO?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So that's
and Joe, who's the inventor of the Tertill, he worked for me at iRobot for many years, and I couldn't imagine a better team than the team we have at Tertill.
Yeah. So then, are you a gardener yourself then, or did you just,
I'm an amateur gardener.
Okay.
I'll tell you, during my iRobot years, I didn't have much time, right? One of the things, as soon as I had a child, right, I wanted them to have the same experience as I did, going out and having fresh food from the garden, going and eating, tomatoes fresh off the vine are a completely different experience than what you get in the stores.
Yeah.
Eating peas off the vines. It's just, it changed, and I started to garden again. So yes, I was doing a gardening, but I also do my own, I had landscapers put in the landscape, but I take care of it except for the mowing myself.
Yeah. So you don't have a robotic lawnmower?
I'm gonna have to tell you, I'd be waiting for the iRobot one.
I'm gonna have to.
Now, because Husqvarna's an investor in Tertill, I might just get a Husqvarna one.
Just have to
in the meantime.
And then you can just make sure you tell everybody Joe Langton helped get me a robot out of the house. So you've had quite an impressive career. So far.
It's been a dream come true, honestly.
Yeah. So is there anything, I already said it once, do you feel like your best years of innovation and invention are ahead of you? Is there, kind of just looking back, do you think iRobot is going to be your greatest thing that you did, or do you see the potential to just open up even farther just because of what you've learned from that endeavor?
Well, I think there's equivalent, if not more, potential in the outdoor space. And the reason is because of, people are very engaged with their gardens, right? They love, they might not like weeding, right? But there's a lot of other stuff that you do to, help your plants grow. We say, you take care of the plants, we'll take care of the weeds. And there's a lot that people don't get a chance to do because they're always going there and weeding. So I think because there's so much space for invention, and then you think of all the other jobs like leaves, snow blowing, excrement.
Yeah.
These are things that should be taken on by robots at up first pass.
So please tell me you're trying to make an excrement picking robot.
I'm not right now. We're fully focused on the gardening space right now at Tertill. But that doesn't mean that's forever, right? Companies grow and they expand.
Well, so I got to tell you a couple things. So first, before COVID hit, we used to do a lot of home and garden shows, mm-hmm. and people would see the robot moving around, and first of all, going back, kids, it doesn't make a difference how old they are. It can be a 5-year-old kid. They walk up and see a robotic lawnmower and they go, it's a lawnmower. And the 40-year-old parents are like, what's that? But the kid knows it's a lawnmower instantly, But every person is like, if that picked up dog poop, I'd buy it today. Right now, I would buy it. There's no doubt about it,
It'll do something with it. It just won't pick it up.
Well, your machine will just stuff it into the neighbor's yard. But then the second thing that I have to tell you is, when I talk to landscapers about robotic mowing, and now this should be important for you guys to hear, is every person. So I'm going to break down one of the reasons I got so involved in robotic lawn mowing. So if I sell a maintenance contract on, let's say, a Costco, because we do a lot of Costco, the biggest thing that we always have to manage is the weeding. And the reason is no one wants to pull weeds. And also, people don't really want to spray weeds. With all the Roundup lawsuits and stuff going on right now, we don't even like asking the people to half the time, and the employees don't like to do it either. So what happens, though, the easiest task that landscapers perform in the maintenance world is cutting the grass, right? So then if I can take the grass cutting away, now they have to spend the time pulling the weed and doing the string trimming. But that's such a wide open market for you guys.
Yeah. So I'll go even further, but first, just a step back. Tertill can work in landscape beds, but they would need a boundary around them and not deep mulch. And the drip hoses would have to be buried. So quite a few people do have them working in landscape beds. But going further, what I meant was, imagine, lawns, forgive me for this, but lawns are great, right? But they're not the best thing you can have. They take a lot of water and they're not very natural. But if you could have native shrubbery, if you could have vegetables, if you could have berries in your landscape, one of the things that keeps people from having that instead of a lawn is the maintenance. Because as you just said, lawns are easy compared to the rest. But with these guys and where we're going to go with it, I can imagine making it so it's much more common to have a landscape of bushes and flowers, because the maintenance will be much less. And I think that's going to be a big help to the environment.
No, so I totally agree with you 100%, because we get people, as landscapers in the design build side, we'll either put in these perennial gardens or even install gardens for people. And 3 or 4 years later, we're back ripping them out because they're like, oh my gosh, I never realized how much work that was going to be to keep those up. Just put grass back.
But imagine as we automate the whole thing and work with landscapers like yourself, so we can build a system for them where if somebody builds it to be robot friendly, then it will work, right? So we can imagine working with people to put in something that's maintenance friendly, and then you just have this, and you don't have to touch it all season. You just put it in, and it's doing the job.
Yes. So you just brought up something. I mean, you think you had the sheet for me, but yeah, working with people on these to make robot friendly places. I've been talking to engineers and architects, landscape
robot and environmentally friendly. I believe they go together.
I believe so too. And I'll tell them, it's like even working with some of these big retailers I work with now, like I tell them, like, when you have your architects, when they develop a new building, to not put grass in the middle of the islands, because you have all these places that have these 150 square foot islands, and they put grass in them, and grass doesn't want to grow right in there anyways, and I tell them, just make that like a perennial bed or whatever, and then just put your green spaces close to the building. We can put the robots there, and then like even your units, you could do a depressed curb line. So instead of it being mounted up in the curb, do a depressed curb line just a couple inches, and now the little weeding robot just moves around the curb line, holds it in, and
even a border of plants to hold it in would work, right? Yeah,
true. Yeah. So anyways, no, I totally agree. And working together, I've been telling everybody with this robotic revolution, as I always call it, is that it's the partners that kind of align and start to work together in the beginning are going to be the most successful, because it's going to take all of us to make it work right.
Exactly.
So, so one of the things that inspired me to have you on the show is that you have a goal to deliver robots that help people to perform dull, dirty, and dangerous jobs. Of course, that's important to me because I'm one of those people. But what inspires you to do that for people like me? So, and our listeners, by the way.
Well, I have to say that's a tagline that was possibly first used by Carnegie Mellon University. That's a very big research center in robotics. I truly believe in it, right? The dull, dirty, and the dangerous is the things that the robots are best at.
Okay.
You have to have a real need that you're putting the robot behind. Vacuuming, weeding. I see so many robot companies, they're trying to make an emotional robot, for example, right? I hope they crack it, right? Because I love every robot, but it's not the hardcore need that people take out the wallet and buy. But with, something like the Roomba, the Tertill, the lawn mowing robots, it's a real need that people have. And I think those are going to be the ones that get out there into the, iRobot's at 30 million Roombas. And I get this, it's not just 20% of the robot vacuuming market. iRobot is 20% of the entire North American vacuum market. So that would have been unimaginable when we started in 1990.
Yeah, no, that is crazy. So my fiance gets so mad at me because we don't have a robot vacuum in our house. So it's actually
don't have a robot vacuum.
Yeah, it's actually kind of ironic that I was just giving you a little bit of crap for not having a robot lawnmower, and I don't have a robot vacuum. But the reason that I don't, and why I hadn't, is I never understood, like, okay, we used to have 4 dogs. Unfortunately, 2 have just passed away. I only have 2 now. And I'd always be like, how is this thing going to even pick up enough? I've got a big house. And, but then the other day I was like, you know what, this is crazy. I'm like the robot guy, and I still vacuum. And then I noticed, well, now it pulls in and it basically cleans itself, and it's like 30 days worth. And I'm like, now. This is crazy. Like, now we're really going somewhere.
Yeah, and the new ones are using a vision navigation system to get around. So, and the hair, that used to get tangled, they've come a long way on that. But you got to start somewhere. And if we hadn't put it on the market in 2002, we wouldn't have got there, right?
So, what's the vision technology? I'm just interested to know for myself. I'm going to get one.
Indoors, there's a little bit of a cheat. You have a camera. Camera chips have come, camera modules have come down a lot in price, but they're tilted a little bit up. And sometimes the furniture and stuff changes, but the ceilings rarely change. So they're making a full SLAM map of the environment as they're running around every time, and they're navigating. SLAM is simultaneous location and mapping. And so they're making a map and navigating within that map of the home.
Wow, that's amazing. See, I didn't even know that existed in those. So,
and that'll come to the lawnmowers at some point in time, I believe. But it's a little bit harder outdoors because of the sunlight, the shadows.
Yeah.
And of course, you've got to be very careful when you have high-speed spinning blades.
Yeah. Well, and then, that's what I would say. I don't know. You don't, unlike the house, you don't have that constant, because everything in landscaping is constantly changing. Trees are growing, bushes are growing, so right. I feel like the surroundings will change. But I'm interested to see, how that goes. So I always like to talk about people that like mentor. So like, do you have some mentors in your life, people that really you look back on, that really helped mentor you to be who you are today?
There were a few professors at MIT that my advisor, Ken Salisbury, William Durfee, who was, I worked for him in a lab, and one of the largest names, Woody Flowers, who was the person who started the first competition. He was an MIT professor when I knew him.
So do you, so my daughter's back in college now. So usually I do this, it's with us. And I always like, as her dad, I literally am constantly telling her she could take over the world one day. Were there any barriers or anything in the field you're in? Do you feel that it's any harder to be a woman in your industry versus a man? Or does that kind of not exist in your guys' world because people see each other as brilliant minds are a brilliant mind?
I think like everything else, things can be a double-edged sword. On one hand, many times I was the only woman in the room, both in technology conferences and in the military conferences. But on the other hand, people always remembered me as the robot lady.
Yeah.
So I stood out. So, everything's
you got good with the
good and the bad, right?
Yeah. I always just wonder, because I know sometimes, like, when you look at our industry, like, the industry of hard labor, in the past is really male dominated, and now with us, my daughter coming in and being in the outside service industry, I always am like telling her, like, don't ever let yourself get pushed around. But a guy like me, wonders, like, I mean, like I said, a brilliant mind is a brilliant mind, but so I just figured I'd ask the question. So, if you're starting all over again, what would you tell your 20-year-old self or 20-year-ago self do? Would you do anything different, or do you think you made all the right decisions?
Looking back, to start a company, not have a business plan, or not have a realistic business plan, etc., I'd say that's probably not the best idea, but it worked out, right? So sometimes you just got to be in it to have the pieces of luck you need fall into place at the right time. So just getting out there and getting into the fight, can make it happen. Even if you don't have that brilliant plan, like, the guys from Google, for example, had up front.
Yeah. So, I mean, do you feel like you ever had any tough times in that business then? I mean, obviously.
Oh, we had a ton. We were hand to mouth at iRobot for the first 5 years, right? We never had the cash in the bank for payroll at the end of the month.
Really?
For 5 years, yes. And we'd have to stop what we're doing, building robots, and do accounts receivable, beg for more time on account payable, and so it was very rough and stressful because we had employees we had to pay and stuff. I think there were easier ways to do it, but we didn't know of them at the time, and we probably wouldn't have been investable right at the time.
Yeah.
So I mean, you could say do it another way, but it worked out great. My career's been a dream come true.
Well, I think one of the things, and I guess this is the call out to even like bankers or people with money, is that, I imagine it was even worse for you than it even is now. And it's still bad. It's like, when I bring up robotic lawn mowing to a bank and say, hey, I want to buy, $500,000 worth of robots. They're like, wait, what are you doing? And then so
you should have heard the reaction in the 90s. Like, I would do this, but my partners would kill me from the investors. I gave at the office. Just so many, robots aren't real, right? You don't bring it up, in the military because Congress will laugh. Right? Somebody actually said that to me.
Yeah, well, and what we get is people being upset that it's taking people's jobs, so like I'll get people that send me emails or whatever, and they're like, oh man, this is crazy. You're taking people's jobs. And I'm looking at it like, these are jobs people don't want. I mean, even like you guys, like, you're helping. I just lost my background here. You're wanting to help with, with diffusing bombs, and, it's probably a little bit different, but now when you're talking these dirty jobs or weeding or whatever, people think these are jobs people want. And nobody's going to school and staying in high school or going to college, but then wants to live the rest of their life pulling weeds or sitting on a lawnmower.
Yeah, especially when you're delivering to consumers, right? It's stuff a lot of times people end up doing themselves and taking away from the quality time they would spend with their children or pursuing their hobby.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, how long do you think it's going to take you to accomplish the things you guys want to accomplish at Tertill? I mean, it sounds like from talking to you, this is just the beginning, or you're just on the brink.
I think it's just the beginning. We've got a wonderful first step with a product that autonomously takes care of the weeding in the vegetable garden. It's highly useful. It's but there's so much further we can go, and I can't tell you about specifics about what we'll do next, but it's just such a high engagement place, and it's such a place people are passionate about and they want their yards and their gardens to look beautiful, and a lot of times they don't have enough time or money to make it that way.
Yeah. Well, and I think your guys' price point is amazing. I mean, when you look at it, it's a very simplistic setup. We
put the Roomba on the market originally back in 2002 for $200. So I think $349 is probably about the same today, with people more used to robots and more used to tech and inflation and stuff. We also did that on both products because it's kind of the price point you don't have to have a big negotiation with your significant other. I could just get this.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Yeah, I mean, that's the one thing with robot mowing is, it's $3,500 and everybody's
Yeah.
like, yeah, it's,
You can just buy it, try it, and we actually have a money back guarantee, so people can return them if they don't
really
like them. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great to know. So, I mean, you've achieved a high level of success. Were you able to keep a good like family like life balance with this type of career? Do you find that?
No, I had none until recently.
What's that? Not until
I
recently?
had none until recently, yes. But it's not like that, right? Because my job has always been my passion and my hobby. So I'm very fortunate in that working hard is something that I've always been in that flow position. That's a philosopher, Csikszentmihalyi. He says the way people are really happy in their lives, if they get into this situation where they're so busy at something that time flies, right? And when you're developing a robot, when you're getting it on the market, it's you get so into it that you're in that flow condition.
I can guarantee that's going to be one of our micro quotes. Like I actually, and I'm saying it out loud to make sure it's one of our micro quotes. Yeah, I love that, and we share that in common. Sometimes I get so wrapped up in the businesses that I'm developing, and.
But when you look back, what were the best times in your life?
Well, so for me, a lot of the best times of my life always revolve around my business development.
Exactly.
Yep. And but I've been really blessed. I mean, my landscape and snow removal company, I do that company with my brother, John. Mm-hmm. This company I'm doing with my daughter, mm-hmm. So I've been one of those people that the way I balance my family and work life is I just bring my family in on it. so it actually works out awesome. But sometimes I look back on it and time going to that whole, flow thing that you said it actually goes by so fast. I look at it and I'm like I'll get so consumed in it. And I'm like, holy cow, it's been 5 years already, but at least I'm enjoying that 5 years,
Yeah, exactly.
So this is more if my daughter was here, she would ask this question. She starts getting this like, how do you keep yourself motivated? I mean, you love what you do, so you probably don't even have to try it, but do you ever find times where you find yourself unmotivated, or does it just come natural?
I find that learning something new every day, that would be my ideal, right? And whenever I step into a new field, always robotic, so I can bring something to the table. It puts me in that learning something new every day mode, which I love.
Yeah, and again, we have that in common. So, are there any obviously Star Wars was a movie for you, but are there any other movies to you that just are inspirational or motivational to you, or even books?
I don't think I should say, but I really like the Terminator, but don't take that the wrong way.
Why would I take that the wrong way? I think it's awesome.
That's not where we're heading. I think we're heading to a lot of devices that help around that people will take for granted, like they take this computers and cell phones for granted.
Yeah. No, good. Yeah, and I guess I see why, because people, when we do robotic lawnmowers, like, has anybody ever seen Terminator? So I suppose I see why you said that now. So, what do you want your legacy to be then? I mean,
one of the people that makes robots not science fiction, but science reality.
That's perfect. I think that's a perfect legacy. So I just want to tell you that anything that I can do to help you, make that vision, I'll always be there, to help you, give opinions on product, anything you have, for people like me in the real world to make that a reality, and not sci-fi. I just want to say I would love to help with that. And
we really appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. And I honestly think that's literally a perfect place to sign off, unless there's anything else you want to add, that you think you want to add on to anything that I didn't cover?
No,
in the
just thanks
research?
for having me on the show.
Good. Good. Yeah. Thank you. I totally enjoyed every moment of it. And I hope the audience enjoyed it as much as I did doing it.
Cool.
So,
Well, thanks.
all right. Thank you very much.